Community School District Board of Education. Mr. Wilson, will you call the roll?
Mr. Arthur.
Present.
Dr. Algress.
Present.
Ms. Riley.
Present.
Mr. Hanson.
Present.
Mr. Grove.
Present.
And I might tell you that two of our board members are gone. One is ill and the other is out of town.
So let's stand for a moment of silence and then the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on our agenda is we are proud of our schools and introductions. Dr. Bruckner.
We are very proud of our schools. We have a couple of students here that we'll introduce later on. We were also going to introduce to you our state wrestling qualifiers and winners, but they're going to be at our first March meeting, so.
So the next item is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion for approval?
I move approval of the agenda as presented.
Second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Riley. Any further comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. This is a part in our meeting where it's fine for the public to address the board. We didn't have anybody ahead of time. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to talk?
Approval minutes.
Oh, I skipped one. Sorry. Still nobody wants to talk to us. Okay, then we'll go back and ask for approval of the minutes.
I move approval of the minutes of February 9th, 2016.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hanson, thank you. Any further comments? All those in favor of approving the minutes as printed, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Now we have the superintendent's report, student achievement.
Thank you. We're going to look at student achievement in the area of career and technical education report. I'm going to go straight to Mr. Forney. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Bruckner and guests. I'd like to take this opportunity to inform the members of the board, the administration, and the community about career and technical education programming in our district. February is designated as National CTE Month, so it is appropriate that we raise public awareness and celebrate the achievements and accomplishments of our CTE programs and validate that these courses and curriculum present our students with opportunities for future college and career success. Career and technical education is one of the few places where students can truly test drive their future. The knowledge and skills these students learn and attain through these experiences will become valuable assets as they make the transition to college and career. Our 3 points of focus and achievement tonight are creating K-12 student learning experiences, expanding student opportunities in multiple career pathways, and providing students with unique real-world experiences. One way to create upward mobility is to provide education and opportunities to establish good habits and develop responsibility in the management of money. Council Bluffs is the only district in Iowa and only one of 2 in the nation to offer a seamless K-12 in-school banking experience for our students. Our kindergarten students can start a savings account and learn how to build their own wealth as they progress through all grade levels and well beyond. Council Bluffs Schools has opened an entrepreneurial incubator in our Business Ventures Academy, where students can develop their ideas for business enterprises and/or services. Let's listen to Olivia and Colin talk about their experiences as future entrepreneurs.
Hello, My name is Olivia Nyman, and I am a senior in the Entrepreneurship Ventures class at Thomas Jefferson. At the beginning of the trimester, we were given the chance to create a logo and a name for the classroom that would be home to our class. My 4 classmates and I branded our classroom, and it, along with our logo, will remain permanent in our school. By branding the room, we created a class that allows students from around the district to brainstorm and create businesses of their own. This class has provided numerous opportunities for us. We've been given the whole trimester to design a class project that the underclassmen will be able to continue working on after our class is gone, due to the fact that we are all seniors. Our class is currently working on a food truck that will be managed by culinary, business, and automotive students from around the district. In working on the food truck, we've practiced real-world skills by interviewing entrepreneurs from many different backgrounds, including cell phones, coffee shops, food trucks, and a manufacturer of activity coins. We've applied the skills we used with interviewing entrepreneurs to meeting and speaking with students around our school. This class not only teaches but promotes necessary skills like the ability to work with others, conduct research, and speak in a public setting. We're not only learning how to finish our senior year strong, but we're learning valuable skills that we'll be able to take with us into college and into the workforce. This class will forever be an outlet for students to create and grow their own ventures while learning essential skills along the way. Now I'd like to introduce Colin Rothmeyer, who will present to you the name of our class and the logo we designed.
Hello, my name is Colin Rothmeyer, and I am a senior at Thomas Jefferson. And Olivia, I don't think you need to do that. I can't see it anyway. So, it's no problem. Anyway, my name is Colin Rothmeyer, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you guys today. The logo, as you can see over there on the right, is a logo that was designed for the class. It was a true group effort. Everybody put their input into this. Everybody worked together to make it. Olivia gave the name. We all voted on that and agreeing. Austin giving the color scheme to it. Jacob giving the abstract design of the flame. And Kane giving the concept of the gear. I put them all together, creating that final design that we are now using for the class. The name we given for it, the InGen, as you can see, was originally meant to mean ingenuity, but we changed it because we thought that it would be better as innovation generation. So it is now hyphenated, and so it differentiates the 2 words, as you can see. The text I chose, I thought, was very business, kind of strong font that fit well with the scheme. The colors I chose for it were orange and blue, which happened to be the district colors, so that was coincidental. The real reason I picked orange was it represents creativity and success and determination. Blue shows wisdom, integrity, and confidence. The design of the gear at the base is meant to show a gear that is constantly moving to make a product work, to function properly. I think that well represents the class as a whole, working together to make a business. The flame on the side of it is showing growth and movement as it goes upward, showing the movement of the gear, and that is to show how we're growing and constantly moving in the class. And it is an honor to be given this opportunity to give a brand and a logo to the school that will now permanently be engraved into it. Thank you.
By the way, that new logo now is very visible right above the doorway, right next to the door to the incubator room at Thomas Jefferson High School. Students have the opportunity to interact and make a difference in our community. We've added a new course sequence pathway to the high-demand industry of computer science. Let's listen to Bryson and Dustin talk about their coding skills and their technology contribution to Celebrate CB.
Hi, my name is Bryson Kirst, and we are working on an app for Celebrate CB. I've been involved in I've been involved in computer science classes for over 4 years now, and I'm a senior. And it allows me to grow as a programmer and led me to the senior project, which is developing an app for Celebrate CB. To begin, we met with Celebrate CB board members to gather requirements for the app. We are programming using Android Studio. Can you go back one, please? Using Android Studio and Java, which, as you see there, that is Java coding. On the left, is an app's user interface. The top rows are allowed the user to view all the events for Celebrate CB, as in events, volunteer, and photos. Volunteer allows the user to go to their website and register to be a volunteer. The photos allows the user to go to their website and look at the photo stream of the selfies for the selfie contest. On the right, the app's icon, which is enhanced from the Celebrate CB logo. So what I did is I took Bayless Park, which is out of their logo, and put it into that to make it look very sleek and neat. Thank you. And next, I will introduce Dustin Gallagher.
Hello, I'm Dustin Gallagher. I'm a senior at Thomas Jefferson High School. I've been taking computer science classes for about 3 years now at both AL and TJ. Some of the classes I took are Data Center, CCNA 1 and 2, and also Python. The development of this app has allowed us to experience real-life projects. We have met often with business professionals and know what it's like to meet deadlines, document our progress, and also to do things over until they're done right. Before we came tonight, we went to the Celebrate CB's reveal at the library. We met and talked with business professionals and also the mayor. This would not have been possible without taking the senior programming capstone classes. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia, Colin, Bryson, Dustin. I think you would all agree with me. These students have bright futures ahead of them. In closing, career and technical education in Council Bluffs is providing students with opportunities for college and career success. The student presentations this evening are great examples of how Council Bluffs are creating K-12 learning experiences, expanding student opportunities across multiple pathways, and providing unique real-world connections. I want to thank the Board of Education and the administration, as well as our community, business, and industry partners for their continued support of career and technical education. If the board has any questions related to the report or the presentation, either our students or I would be happy to respond.
Anybody have any questions? I just have one question. I noticed on the statistics, the number of students involved in CTE is trending downward. Do you have a reason for that, a rationale?
Well, there's always a domino effect in scheduling, and what we've done is we've also added offerings, courses outside the CTE area to meet student needs. And so, you know, as we have more course offerings, that's going to disperse the numbers out a little bit. So that's one of the reasons. We have more offerings in elective areas in art and music. We have ACT prep, advanced placement prep, and so that's kind of spreading the numbers out a little bit.
So you're doing what your area claims to do. You're incubating other courses. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
Not really, but but yes. I mean,
That's related to CTE, but you don't count them as those
we
courses.
have a wide range of course offerings to
Yeah, well,
help every student reach their
that
potential.
answers my question. Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit more about the career readiness certificate and what it is and how valuable it is?
Certainly will. We just finished up with a round of testing today for the second trimester of, for students. So the National Career Readiness Certificate is an assessment that we think is valuable to provide to students. And it gives them information in terms of their, at this moment in time, their academic foundations as they relate to the workplace and across thousands of occupations across the nation. We tell our students that it's just another tool to add to their toolbox, to add to any college application resume. We've had students that they know they have to take the ACE to get into college, and so then they question, well, why take the ACT work keys? And our response is, well, 99% of our students are also working while they're in college, and this certificate and its portability across state lines can enhance your application process for any job. And again, it's just another measurement that's very relevant to what we're trying to integrate into our CTE curriculum with work-related skills.
Can I ask a question related to that? We were just recently sharing the good news about the fact that 70% more kids passed our NCRC last year than the year before. And I had the opportunity to talk to a young person at Abraham Lincoln who took it last year, and I said, "Are you taking it again?" And he said, "No," but I think I talked him into it. But the benefit is if you take it and you go up in skills, you have more to brag about on your resume. If a student took it last year and then took it again this year in order to raise their score, would they count in both years, or?
Yes, they recognize the highest score, whichever year that highest score takes place in. And
So if the student didn't take it this year, we would not have him counted in this year because he didn't take it this year, he took it
Right.
last year, even though he's still a student.
can't go backwards in terms of the level that they achieve at.
Thank you.
I guess, is it intuitive that they should be taking it every year?
We found that actually, by their senior year, and they've had this wealth of curriculum, that they do better their senior year as opposed to a sophomore or junior year. So we really encourage students. Sometimes we'll have a student that scores high in 2 of the subtest areas and a little lower in 1, and we'll do some extra practice with that student to try to get them from a bronze level to a silver or gold level.
And let me be really open. Some of these tests are simply moneymakers for test companies. They really are. I really sometimes believe that. But if it gives a student the ability on a resume to say, you know, when I was in high school, I took the NCRC and I scored at the gold level, whether an employer looks for that or not, it certainly is a conversation piece that not every student can put on their resume. So I am not encouraging that students need to test and test and test and test, but there are times that it might be a little chip that might make the difference.
And it's free at this time.
Thank you to the students for presenting. You did an excellent job. Thank you.
Thanks for coming and presenting to us, students. That's great. Okay, informational planning, or on initial information about budget planning for 2016-18. Mr. Wilson's already up there, ready to go, huh?
We know that the conversation across the state of Iowa has to do with school funding, and we were going to have this budget planning conversation in our negotiation session, but we decided it might be good to share it with the public at large, and we invited some people from our parent advocates to even come and listen to the message. So we're glad that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you, David. You're the man. Where'd everybody go? Thank you, Mr. Grove. As Dr. Bruckner said, we had shared this information with many of, or if not all of our administrators last week. Please note the title up there. I have a 2016 to 18 budget discussion. This is not a one-year discussion. This could go 2 or more years depending on how the state is going to fund us for the future. Dr. Bruckner has tasked several groups with coming up with some suggestions in order to mitigate some of the issues we're going to discuss tonight. And I would suggest tonight that we not discuss any specifics, and let those groups do their work and come up with some ideas so that we can present at a future board meeting some recommendations for the board's consideration. Wanted to start out with a little background information here. There are 2 metrics that we use in school finance to determine the financial health of a district. One is called the solvency ratio. Solvency ratio is essentially, did we make or lose money in the general fund? By the way, these metrics I'm talking about and what we're talking about tonight is all general fund. They recommend a solvency ratio of 5 to 10%. Now, the solvency ratio is important really for only one thing. When we go out and we obtain bond money in the future, the bond lenders look at the solvency ratio as a positive or negative regarding how solvent the district is, and what they will do is they will set an interest rate based on that. Now, if you understand how the whole thing works, this has nothing to do with paying back those bonds, but that's what they use. So if our solvency ratio is low in the future and we do fortunately get some penny money in the future and we want to go ahead and bond out for that to remodel some schools, the solvency ratio all of a sudden becomes important because it could cost us a lot of money in interest if the solvency ratio isn't what they deem to be healthy. The next one, which is the more important of the 2, is the unspent authority. You've heard me talk about this before. So essentially what unspent authority is that the state says you can count certain things for spending authority and you can't count certain things for spending authority. And when we add it up at the end of the day, this is how much authority or permission you have to spend money. I use the example where you hear on the news that if Congress doesn't pass the spending bill by tonight, they run out of money. They don't run out of money, they run out of authority to spend the money. And that's essentially what this is as well. For instance, you're going to be voting tonight on dropout prevention, to ask the state for allowable growth for that. That gets counted towards spending authority, but we don't get any money for that. We have to levy property taxes in order to get the cash to spend that money. Same thing with the deficit for SPED. We have spending authority for any deficit, but they don't give us any cash. Now, we do get cash inside of our levy for the cash, it's called the cash reserve levy, but they don't count that towards spending authority. So it's this hodgepodge of things that they count, but they don't count. But this is the more important of the 2 ratios that all school districts in Iowa are looking at. Expenses are common to both of these ratios. If you decrease expenses, both these ratios improve. Okay? If the district remains within the recommended targets, no matter the level of funding by the state, we really won't experience any financial problems. However, the decisions to remain within those targets becomes the issue. So if our funding remains paltry, but we maintain those target levels, financially we're in good shape.
Dean?
Yes, sir.
Question for you on the unspent authority then. We have to go to the state to get permission to take that portion, correct?
In the budget that we do every April, that's in there.
Okay.
So we are going before the state saying that we have this maximum spending authority that we want to put in. Now, any spending authority that you do not use carries over to future years. So you see up there, I have a recommended 8% plus. I recommend we have an 8 to 12% range, okay? So what we want to do is, that unspent authority that we carry over year to year, we want that, as they calculate it, to be 8 to 12%. That's a healthy range. You get above that, you're probably not spending money on education as maybe you could. You get below that, you start running into some issues regarding spending and sustainability over a long period of time.
But we don't actually spend those dollars. They just go towards our towards our bucket of available funds, so it looks better for our financials?
It has nothing to do with financials. The spending authority is a state DE calculation that basically says you have authority to spend this amount of money. We could have $100 million in the bank. We could have made $1 million last year. If our spending authority is negative, that's a big problem. Okay, so it doesn't matter financially leads you to that. But as I said, in the spending authority realm, there's certain things that they count toward it, and there's certain things that they don't count toward it.
So is this our unspent authority in total?
Yes,
Or is this the amount that we had put in for last year we didn't spend?
in total. This is the carryover plus what we got for this current year
Gotcha.
is where we're at, okay? It's that carryover amount that was really kind of what we're concerned about, because that is the unspent authority, all right?
It accumulates over the years.
It does. It goes up and down, depending upon, did you spend more than you were, quote unquote, not allowed, but did you spend more than what you had thought you were going to spend? Did you spend less? If you spent less, the spending authority goes up. You spend more, the spending authority goes down. It moves all the time, every year.
So-
The trick is to keep within a range. I'm
So
sorry.
if the state gives us authority to spend money, right? And they give us certain authority to spend money on every student, then they give us, I'm making this simple and it may be wrong, then they give us weighted ability to spend more money on some children, English learners, special education children. Then they give us permission to spend money for our dropout prevention, and they give us money to spend for special education services to meet the needs of kids. That's about all?
We also get some spending authority from our property tax levy. We get spending authority from certain things in state aid. As I said, there's a hodgepodge of different things. There's a calculation that they come up with, and I can tell you as an accountant, I just looked and say, who the heck came up with this? But that's what they use.
So whenever you get to that number, that's the amount of money that we have the authority to spend.
Correct.
And if we spend more than that, then we're dipping into our unspent.
That's
money.
correct. It's essentially like the reserve at the state. State has $720 million in reserve. They dip into it. That just means there's less next year if it goes down, right? Same thing with this unspent authority. The problem is that the best analogy I've ever heard about unspent authority is if you get it to a low level, it's like trying to push spaghetti up a wall. You can imagine that scenario because it's so much to get it in a positive way that
So in our district, if we say we have very specific needs that we think we have to do for children.
Right.
So we want to spend more money than the state says we can. We want to take some money out of that bucket and put it in here and spend it because we know it's the right thing to do. But the problem is, the bucket has less money. For the next year, we want to take money out.
that is correct. This is the district's solvency ratio. This was the first ratio I showed. And the solvency ratio, they said, again, we want it between 5 and 10%. You can see that we've been at a very good rate the last 5 years. The red bar is the state median. So the state median means that's, as a median, the state's other districts have a little higher solvency ratio. Ours right there is very healthy. The state median is really, really healthy, okay? The next one is the district's unspent authority trend. Again, we wanted 8% to about 12%. State median is about 17%, pretty high. And we're, in my opinion, in a pretty good range the last 3 years.
Our numbers are similar to other UENs and larger districts?
No, every district is different,
Completely
which I'm
different.
going to show you here in a minute. So as I said, the recommended solvency ratio is 5 to 10. What we did is we lost last year in the general fund about $1.7 million, almost $1.8 million. We're anticipated to lose about 2.6 this year. The solvency ratio decreases near the minimum target for fiscal year 17 and 18.
And I'm going to go back to your words. You said the district lost. What you mean is we spent more money.
Then we
took
in. That's correct.
But this nearly identical to our special education deficit?
Very close to it, yes.
But are they the same pool of funds or no?
It's a whole hodgepodge of things.
Similar.
Okay, now here's the deal. The special ed deficit gets counted back towards spending authority. They give us that money back. okay? But our spending authority is starting to drop, which is my next slide here. The district's unspent authority, if we lose the 2.6 this year, is going to go down to about 9.42. Still in a good range, okay? That's not bad. But the unspent authority decreases below the minimum targets in 17 and 18. Now, can you operate like that? Yes. But you've got to be extremely careful, because if you start spending too much money, all of a sudden that thing gets close to negative, and that's a really, really bad thing at the DE for a school district to go below 0, okay? This is a graph, and I don't know if you can see this very well, but the blue area is what I call the Goldilocks zone. The Goldilocks zone is districts that have, on the left-hand side is cash, and on the x-axis is spending authority. In the Goldilocks zone there, that shows that spending authority between 8 and 16%, and they have decent cash reserves between 8 and 18%. Good spending authority, good cash, they can meet their obligations, they can grow for the future. The red zone is the problem. You've got 3 UEN districts, Iowa City, Southeast Polk, and Cedar Rapids, that is down there. You can see Cedar Rapids, their spending authority is about 2.5 to 3%. I talked to the CFO there, over there the other day, and they have not too much cash. I asked him, I said, what are you guys doing? He said, we've had to make cuts every year for 7 straight years. And you cannot believe how they measure everything to the gnat's eyebrow, because they're so close to that 0 point, all right? If you look at other districts like Ottumwa has a lot of spending authority and a lot of cash.
Now, which district is it that's in struggling, and they were gonna say they were just gonna spend the money anyway?
Davenport.
But they
So-
look like they have plenty of,
So Davenport has plenty of cash, but they don't have a lot of spending authority, and that's their whole issue. Hey, we got all this cash, we can spend it, but we don't have any spending authority. So that's the district that's saying, we're just gonna ignore state law and we're just gonna spend it anyway. We'll see what happens. Okay, so the current reality is this. Current forecasted losses are unsustainable. We just can't keep losing 2 million plus every year. Based on current estimates to maintain a solvency ratio of at least 5% and an unspent authority of 8%, we are going to either have to enhance revenues or cut spending between $4.5 to $5.5 million over the next 2 years, which is roughly 4.5% of our total budget per year. Okay? If enrollment goes down, our results are worse because we get less money per pupil. This is a summary of a projection that I did. We're looking at, we estimated state aid at 2.45% for each of the next two years, maybe higher, maybe lower. Enrollment growth, we know we're going to grow 25 students based on last October's enrollment for next year. We forecasted 0, so it's flat enrollment. Wage increases, we used only 2% here. And new positions, we said we're not going to hire any new positions. Based on what we're seeing here, you can see down at the bottom, our unspent authority drops from 942 at the end of the estimated amount for the end of this year down to 5.37 in 2 years. If wage increases are higher than what we project, that unspent authority gets worse really quickly.
So on this slide, if wage increases are higher than that, it's worse. If state aid is higher than that, it's better.
Correct. But the thing of it is that, you know, a 1% increase in state aid for us is about $700,000. Okay, so we're not talking millions of dollars here, you know. They have to give us more money than that. Salary and benefits as a total group consume about 75% of our total expenses. Okay? When you look at transportation, utilities, sped, tuition out, that consumes about another 17%. So that's 92% of our money right there. Now, the other 8% are supplies, maintenance, things like that. Well, you just can't cut out maintenance. If a water fountain's broken in a school, or you got a toilet that's broken, you got to fix it. You can't just knock out instructional supplies. If kids need papers and pens and whatever, you have to buy those. So not all that 8% is really something that we could just say, okay, we just cut that out. You can't. You could probably cut some of it. But where the real money's at is 75% of it is in salaries and bennies. 60% of our total costs are salaries and bennies for teachers and paras. So you can see that we're talking here about kind of the laws of large numbers here. That's where it's at. This is the district's estimated trends on the solvency ratio and the unspent authority. The blue lines represent what I call the zones that we want to stay in. So you can see on the solvency ratio on the left, based on the estimates that we used in that prior worksheet that I just showed you, we're starting to drop near to the range where we're at the low end of the range. For unspent authority, we do drop below the low end of the range.
So in reality, we went from where we were talking about, wow, isn't it nice how much surplus we have? And with the teacher, kind of the increases we made with our commitment to teachers, and then the change in the TLC, and then, I mean, is that the majority of this difference in spending?
Yeah, Dean has a slide coming up that shows we've really added a lot of positions in the last several years, primarily because we thought there were needs for students and because of the TLC. The 5.4%, if I'm reading that right, insolvency ratio in 2011 was the year that the governor did the 10% across the board cut. And you've heard our governor currently say that he doesn't want to give us money and then take it away because that problem exists. But you can see that we're getting dangerously close to the same fortunes if we don't have the money. It's a balancing act.
It is. The other thing is that, you know, when anyone, I've said this before up here, when you're talking about caring for human beings, it's expensive. We have 1,500 students roughly that are in the special education program. About 25% of those kids have special needs. It's expensive to take care of and serve those students. Okay, so dealing with human beings is expensive. How did we get here? Okay, the SPED deficit increased $1.3 million from fiscal 13 to fiscal 15. Now, that only impacts the solvency ratio because we get that deficit back. Okay, the rest of these affect both. We have a decline in funding. You can see in fiscal year 13 we had 2%, 14 2%, 15 they gave us 4. Last year they gave us 1.25, and they're looking at 2.45 or less this year.
Was the sped deficit increase, was a bunch of that due just to increased staff we put in to take care of those kids?
A lot of it was staff,
Or were there other?
and there were services outside that we had contracted for, yes. Dollars for new settlements consume 100% plus of all of our new money. Fiscal year 14, they had one-time money of $1 million. So what does that mean? So you saw the 2%, the 4%, whatever. What they do is they take roughly $6,500, multiplied times the number of students you have, and that's, in a very simple way, the money you get, okay? So what they did was back in 14, instead of adding it onto the base, they just gave us one-time money. So if they'd have added that onto the base, we'd have in our pocket $2 million more than we do right now. But since they only did it once, that was the problem. Iowa West grants are down $400,000. Why? Because we went to TLC and we didn't have curriculum coaches anymore. Loss of Microsoft settlement. We received, based upon a Microsoft lawsuit, there was a nationwide deal about $600,000 2 years ago. It will be zero next year. That money's all used up. Federal funding has reduced about $250,000, and you can see the new positions added. That's 82 new teachers and 39 new paras. So if you look at the wage analysis here, the top line is the paras, the third line are the teachers. When I add those up and I take out the effects of the TLC grant, and this is just wages, this is not the benefit portion of it all. Our para and teacher wages have gone up about $4.5 million in 2 years after I extract out the TLC. Everybody else, admins, tech, clerical, is up just over $1 million.
And I want to reinforce, that's not because the salaries went up, that's because we added
New positions.
purposefully new positions.
It's both. I mean, we had wage increases, but you're correct. Most of it is because we added new positions because of need. This next slide is so the yellow slide across the graph, they're going down slightly, is our enrollment. So since 2000, you can see we've had a decrease, but it's starting to level out now, and it's actually kind of gone back up, actually. The other graph the other line starting at the far left, kind of what color is that? Kind of a brown line, I guess, going up, that is our costs. And the other line starting in 2007, 2008, I put in that is the amount of state aid and property taxes. So that pink band I have in the middle, that's what we have to make up through other funding, whether it's Title I grants, Iowa West grants, or whatever else. That's the break we have to make up every year. So you can see that it's a lot of money that we've got to put in there every year. And if a grant goes away, we have a problem then. This one is the general fund cost per student compared to the other UENs. Our cost per student is about $11,900 a student. It's the second highest among this group. Now that can be a good thing. It could also mean that we've got some needs that some of the other districts may not be dealing with. Some of them probably are. Some of them may not be. This is the instructional cost per student. $8,113. This is as of 2014, I might add. Our district is below the state average, which is all the way on the far right, but of the UENs, it's the second highest. This is the building admin cost per student. Building admin would be your principals, assistant principals, SAMs, administrative assistants, and whatever. Our costs are the second highest again in the state. So I called around to these other UENs because we found this one kind of intriguing, seeing why is that? And we have SAMs in our buildings, and they do a good job to allow the principals to do things to help assess curriculum and teachers. A lot of these districts either do not have SAMs or they have a limited number of SAMs. We find them valuable. Other districts are going to get along without them. Some districts only put them in Title I buildings. Some districts only put SAMs in buildings that maybe have a certain enrollment amount. But that's probably why that number is higher than the rest.
It certainly is. And just some background information, we started SAMS about 8 years ago. Came with a grant from Iowa West. They gave us SAMs for 7 buildings, our 3 largest elementary buildings and our 4 secondary buildings. We found the benefit to be so important that we added a couple a year until we had one at every building. We share one between our 2 smallest buildings now. That program, the SAMS program, has allowed us to do the instructional improvement and the instructional coaching and the principal as instructional leader, more than almost anything we could do. If we took that away, principals would have different jobs than they have now. So we have made a choice. Iowa West said from the very get-go they weren't going to fund SAMS forever, and they can't fund SAMS forever. So starting next year,
Next year,
they're
they'll
going
fund
to
one less.
fund one less, and they will remove 1 or 2 over the next 5 years until we either are supporting all the SAMs ourselves or we're making some other choices. But it's a choice that's really, I think, made us who we are, but it does have us there at the second highest for building administrative costs. It's not administrators, it's what we spend on administration.
Correct. The next slide is our special education cost trends. You can see it's starting to separate out into a nice Y there. We have about, as I said earlier, 1,500 students, and about 25% are level 2, level 3, probably 25% plus. Those kids have higher needs, a lot of one-on-one for those kids. It's expensive. These are some of the anticipated financial changes that we're looking at here in the next, and this one's in the next year. We have that early retirement program, which the board voted on at a meeting or 2 ago, and we anticipate about a $200,000 savings by having folks come in at a lesser pay than the folks that are in the jobs now. Student transportation will probably the cost increase will be up about $100,000. We'll talk about student transportation in a little bit. Textbook adoption, we skipped the adoption for this year. Dr. Vorthman would like to see us do the adoption next year. That's about a $600,000 increase. We're going to lose that SAM funding, as Dr. Bruckner pointed out. That's a salary and bennies for one SAM. We have a possible increase in overtime due to a law change. The Obama administration has changed the rules, so somebody making $23,000 currently or less is subject to have overtime, and there's a few other caveats in there. They're proposing to raise that number to $50,440, if I have that number correct, Janet. We don't know what the impact of that will be. It's about 35 people in our district. Now, if they don't work overtime, the impact is zero. If they work some overtime, we'll have some cost there. I don't think it'll be substantial, but it will be an increase in cost. We wanted to move some expenses. We're going to move some expenses from the general fund to the PEPAL fund. We had we talked about that at a board meeting last year when the voters voted for the voted PEPAL. We believe we can move probably about 500 grand out of there. Wage increases, we're looking at probably $2.2 million. And new funding is about $1.8 million for this next year. There's going to be other things, there'll be ins and outs for other things, but these are kind of the major highlights if we carry on as usual. For the 17-18 year, new funding, we're going to assume 2.45% with no enrollment increase. That's about $1.5 million. You know, as you say, we had $1.8 million last time, but we had $1.4 million here. That's because we have flat enrollment. We don't get any more money. Wage increase is about 2.3. We'll still benefit from the early retirement savings in that year. Student transportation will increase possibly $300,000 because we may rebid out the transportation, and from what we're hearing from consultants, they're increasing rapidly around the country. And we'll lose another $140,000 in SAMS funding from Iowa West. So that is the budget presentation for tonight. And as I said, we have folks working on some ideas to help mitigate some of these effects, which we will present at a future board meeting. But is there any questions I can answer at this point?
What's the good news?
The good news is actually this. We have 2 years to figure this out. There are districts every year that are dealing with this issue every year. Now, I will tell you this, if funding remains poor, we could be doing the same thing. But we at least have 2 years to figure this out in the hope that the state will see fit to give us more increase in funding in future years.
I'd say some more good news includes 3 people that are in our audience tonight. We have over 60 parent volunteers who have said they will serve as legislative advocates for us. That's more than we've ever had before. We believe that legislators need to hear the message from parents that will be affected, and their children will be affected. That hasn't happened before, so Council Bluffs may be a force to be reckoned with. Dean pointed out we can do this over 2 years. We do not want to start panic among our rank and file. We do not want people to think the sky is falling. What we want to do is to say that we will calmly do 2 things. First of all, we will certainly analyze all of our spending and see if there are ways that we can spend less. But secondly, we will fight like dogs to say this is important. Several of you were at a workshop this week in which we were told when a legislator says, well, we already support public education, what do you want us to cut? That's really not our problem. What we want to say is this is vitally important, and we elected you to help us solve this problem. It's not our job to solve it. It's our job to do the best we can to make reasonable cuts, to propose to our Board of Education how we can continue to increase our graduation rate, how can we continue to help our children be more and more successful, how can we continue to provide programs such as the one you saw tonight, such as the 2 you saw last time we had a board meeting. We can't do all of those things and deal with this financial crisis. And we believe our community is at a point that they expect us to find solutions to this. So we will, and we are optimistic that we will do the best we can. And if we slip below that blue line that Dean's put up there, so be it. because we're going to do the best we can for as long as we possibly can. We have the hope that after this year, when the third group of teacher leadership compensation, $50 million packages is done, and when some tax cuts are done, we believe that we might be back to a standard that can go back to supporting education the way it needs to. So that's why I'm very appreciative of the fact that we are looking at this as a 2-year solution instead of a 1-year reaction.
I have a question on the special education funding deficit. I am assuming that anything we can get that we can recover dollars for, we do. And that in general, the extra cost is more us trying to meet what we deem as the commitment that they want us to meet for the kids.
Correct.
And these are federal dollars, these are federal programs, the federal mandates, not state mandates, correct?
It's a federal mandate, it's not federal dollars, it's state dollars.
But it's federal mandate, and then we just try to meet that, their individual education plan or whatever program that they're in, we try to meet that as best as we can. And if we run a deficit, we go to the state asking for more. But they have no requirement to fund you more, to provide you dollars at all.
The funding, again, comes from
It's
property
from the federal.
taxes.
Okay.
Property comes from, that's where the cash comes from. If we cut $1 million out of the sped deficit, it doesn't help us on the spending authority. So, because the deficit is what we get back anyway, you cut it $1 million, then your expenses are lower, and your add back's lower, it's a net zero. So
but I'm
unspent
just-
authority will not be
I'm just
affected at
curious,
all.
are there any of those ones that are like dual positions where there's teachers who do sped and do something else? Or I think, like, that's inherently tied to a lot of our other buckets, isn't it, the sped money? It's not just like these are purely those programs. These could be teachers who are part-time there, part-time here, or,
Well, if they are part-time special education, the only part that we can charge back to special education
Right.
comes from the part they spend in special education. So it is an unfunded mandate. It's one that we have to meet, and we don't begrudge the fact that we have to meet it, but it makes our job more difficult.
but it's almost like something we can never
Never get out from
never
under.
get out from under this one.
And we
So what's
think,
happened in the past 3 years' time? Have we just gotten better at serving those kids?
I think we've gotten better
Or-
at serving those kids. We honestly have some children that come to us, we think perhaps on purpose, because we serve them pretty well. We've made numerous changes in our special education program to do a better job of meeting their needs. You've seen that over the course of 4 or 5 years. We now have special programs at several of our schools. I think the work that we do, I'll use one as an example, the work that we do in autism is fantastic. And if I had a child who was autistic, who was identified as that, I would want that child to be served in this school district, which is great. And it does good things for the children, but it costs us more money.
We also identified a year and a half ago, students who were they have 3 levels of special education, 3 the highest level. We had students who were probably rated 1s and 2s, it should have been 2s and 3s. And so when they moved them over to that, there was more resources that we needed to help them move along.
We also continue to work with 2 major agencies that support us with special education. That's Heartland Family Services and Children's Square. They've been wonderful partners to us, but they're aware of this. They're aware of the fact that we're looking very, very closely at these changes, and we have to ask ourselves, with any of our services, are there better ways we can do it? So some of our partners are a little worried about this conversation also.
Special ed is just kind of a unique category of funding. Because every special ed deficit we have, we can get the money back by assessing the local property taxpayer, correct?
Through the cash reserve levy, correct?
Yes. We can't do that for regular ed students,
Correct.
which when I was in the business, it always kind of griped me.
I agree with you. We could, if the board wanted to double the rate overnight, which I'm not recommending, it would not help with spending authority 1 penny.
That's right. But you do get the cash back.
You do get the cash back. So you could be in a position with, like Davenport, cash rich and spending authority poor.
Now, another problem, sometimes a special ed team that assigns the educational program for the kid may decide the best program is someplace out of our district. And that could, if it's a full-time, 24-hour deal, that could cost us $30,000 or $40,000, right?
That's all
But
special
all
ed.
we get out of it for funding is 3 times state aid, isn't it? The 3.0 category?
2.74, yeah,
Is that the highest one?
yeah,
Okay, so you take that times the 6,500, that's all we get.
right.
Don't we get actual cost for special education?
You get, so what he's saying is that how much cost is it costing us versus how much money are we getting? We do have other sources of funds. We have Medicaid money, IDEA money coming in. If you have claims that are above a certain threshold, you have high claims money that you can get back from the state. So in fact, we had one of those last year. If it goes over a threshold of about 45,000, you get that money back. So there are mechanisms to get some of that back.
But that's a long ways from the 18,000,
Yeah, it is,
which we make up.
yes.
Do we have, I mean, I don't want to pick on this category. Do we have costs broken down to that much, or we could say, yeah, we have certain areas where we just don't get compensation near enough for certain students, relationships, whatever it is, where we're just
Well, if-
run to the 8 ball on funding because of,
If you look at the graph I did earlier, remember I said $11,000 our instructional cost? What do we get from the state? 6,500? So we got to make that $5,000 up somewhere.
Property taxes is part of it.
Property tax is part of it.
Now, property taxes is another problem in Council Bluffs because our property is valued less than property in almost no, it's not almost, we needed to put that slide in here. Then every single district that touches us, our property valuation per student is less. And in some cases, $100,000 per student less. That's how much property is worth in those districts. So what is difficult to explain with a smile is we have fewer, we in trying to keep our tax levy reasonable, which we have done, we have maintained in excellent condition for the last 5 years, we do not get as much money for our tax levy as you might if your property was worth more. I mean, but all of this is frustrating, but it doesn't solve our problem. Our problem is we have to figure it out. We can say, woe is us, all night long. There's 2 things we can do. We can cut expenses, or we can get better funding. We need our legislature to give us better funding, and we promise our community we will look very, very closely at any way we can cut spending. But those are the only 2 options we have.
I know Steen had that in there, the bottom line is that both taxes and sped do not affect our unspent authority.
Correct.
And we've also made a promise, which we will keep to our community, that if they supported the PEPO levy, to extend it, to move some expenses out of the general fund and into PEPO, that we would not raise our levy this year. And we're going to keep that promise.
Right.
We've promised. So.
So one
we're-
thing, to follow up with what Troy says, in a little bit, you're going to be voting on the approval asking the state for dropout prevention money. We sent in a plan. We haven't got the results back from that plan. We're asking for $2.9 million, which is all spending authority. The cash comes from property taxes. State comes back and says, nah, we don't like the plan, we're going to give you $1.5 million. That means that there's another $1.5 million that we just overnight lost in spending authority. That's how quickly this thing unravels on you.
Anything else?
No, nope,
Let's move right on to transportation.
transportation it is.
This one's bad, too.
Okay. There's the stats up there. I won't read them. They're basically very close to what they were last year. We do have our bus leases paid out of the PEPL fund. So there's about $410,000 that is not being charged through for the general fund, which is a help. Okay? This is the transportation cost for the district. Now, this would be all of our routes, this would be all of our activity buses, everything that has to do with transportation fuel, that's what our costs have been. The 14-15 year, we had a little increase there because we paid a little bit extra for, to first student, but we also had a lot more activity buses as well. Okay? Other busing comments, basically, we have an internal committee that works on dealing with some of these issues. We're meeting again tomorrow. There's some issues out there that are going to be tough, especially in light of funding and whatever we have to do. You know, are we going to make some changes? Busing for special education students has increased, and that's, we have to drop them off at their door. We have to pick them up at their door. If a kid needs a service over in Blair, Nebraska at a center, which we do have one student that does that, we are required to take that person over there. If we have a homeless family, if they live within an 11-mile radius of the district, we have to provide them transportation. We're in the second year of a 3-year contract with First Student right now. So there's some other things I want to talk about, though. We had a bus consultant review, as you have heard of, and I put a copy of that in the board packet. There were several issues that they dealt with that I'm going to just kind of highlight here. The pricing that First Student gave us, we were all not happy last year when we had to approve, or the board approved, I should say, the increase to pay for students some more money because they were to give us a 90-day notice if we didn't. We didn't like that. But what happened was when the consultants came in and did a study, they said even though that was a hard pill to swallow, you're still financially better off doing that than you would have been to bid it out. By their estimates, they're saying that transportation costs for districts are going up 10 to 11% a year around the country. The reason is Durham and First Student are owned by two essentially Fortune 500 type companies over in England. They have told their companies over here, your margins aren't good enough, increase them. So they've increased prices to school districts around the nation, and that's what we're reaping here. The extra money that we did provide for students, they said they were going to pay their drivers more, and they did. What we have found is their driver turnover now has stabilized. It was really up and down. It has now stabilized the last 2 months. So we look upon that as a good sign. That helps us, that helps our kids, because the bus drivers obviously recognize that child every day. And you don't have a sub coming in who doesn't know the route and create some consternation if they drop a kid off at a wrong place or make an error that way. Insufficient resources. We currently run a 2-tier bus system. What does that mean? That means that a bus delivers to one school, then goes to another school, picks up kids and goes to another school. They deliver to 2 schools right now. The district has a lot of after-school programs right now, 21st Century, a lot of athletics and whatever. The problem is we've had 69 buses. We can't do all of it. We don't have enough resources to go in there and do the routes and then get back timely to take these kids at 3:30 to a game over somewhere else. We simply do not have the resources. Well, what's been happening was one of 2 things. One, the bus companies tries to make it work for us. And when they do, they're very accommodating. We thank them for it, but then kids are late coming home. The other one is that we've had to sometimes charter buses to get kids to a certain athletic event, which is a lot more money. Okay, so we just don't have enough resources as they pointed out. The solution, we could lease more bus and vans, or vans. The vans right now is that we've got, I don't know if it's in, yeah, it's down here below. We have 8 routes that transport 3 or fewer students right now. Those are all sped. What we could do is if we lease, say, 3 vans for First Student at about $8,000 a van per year, we could do those one-offs and keep those buses that we're currently using in the fleet to do after-school activities or to address routes more. 21st Century, in their grant, they can allow for buses to be paid for out of that grant. So what we're going to do, we're going to take them up on that. We can probably get 2 more buses out of that and try to designate those only for the 21st Century Grant Program, okay? We are only transporting kids at about 35% capacity in the buses. Buses hold about 70 kids, most of the larger ones. we're transporting 35% or less on average. Now, some buses are crowded, so it's not all buses, okay? There's some buses that have very few kids on them, all right? As the study pointed out, what we want to do, what we want to do, what other school districts have done is they have about a 55% capacity level. Now, if you do that, the kids are going to ride on the bus longer. Our kids average about 27 minutes on a route. Those other districts that have 55%, those kids are on the bus 45 to 55 minutes. So we've made a conscious choice to do it this way. In light, again, of budget considerations, how sustainable is that? We're looking into it. This graph right here represents the run times. The first, all the way on the left is the morning, and in the morning time, there's 55 minutes in there. All the way on the far right, the gold bar is 40 minutes. So we have less time to get kids picked up and to their homes later in the day because of bell times. One of the things we're looking at is that if we did change the bell times, we could increase that 40 minutes to 55. We'd go to a 3-tier route, and if we did that, we'd have enough buses to pick up all the kids, get them home on time. Bus rides may be a little bit longer, but we'd also have buses for activities, and because we're not running as many routes, we could reduce about 10 to 12 buses out of our fleet and still meet all those demands, which would save us about $300,000 a year if we went that route.
Would drop-off times change with that?
Dropout times?
Drop-off.
Oh, drop-off time, yes, it could. It could,
That was a,
yes, it could,
that was a concern for a neighboring district recently,
it could,
parents and daycare.
yes, it could. The second bar at the top is our high school and middle school times. The first blue bar toward the bottom, that blue where it starts in blue, that's our elementaries. So our elementaries start at 8:45, and the kids drop off at 3:35. The 40-minute window at the end of the day is a big problem, because obviously, you know, kids, when they come out, they don't necessarily get on the bus right away, get in their seats and go. So there's about a 10 or 15-minute load time now that 40 minutes has been cut down. So that's some of the issues that First Student's been dealing with, and what we've done in the past is we've kind of blamed First Student for this, and all the time, really, the way that we're doing this, we're not necessarily being our own best friend, because our times at the end of the day are tight, and we have not given them enough resources to pick up and drop off our kids. And we've done that purposely because of costs. This graph here is the runs in the morning. You can see on the 2-tier, there's a big push on one time and another push on the other time when the elementaries and high schools, wherever they're at in there, flip in and flip out. This is the run at the end of the day. It's a tighter pattern. Okay? Some other things that the bus consultants pointed out is the district policies are not being followed all the time. We have space available. Space available for middle school students that reside more than 1.25 miles but less than 2 miles qualify for space available. And for high school, it's 2.5 to less than 3. Elementary does not have space available. We've erred on the side of servicing our students to get them to school. And there's some routes that we're doing right now that are exception to policy that we probably should not be running. Okay? But, again, we've erred on the side of serving our students. If we do follow the space available policy, which is the board policy, the board passed this several years ago, we're going to reduce costs through more efficient ridership, but some students riding right now are not going to ride next year. We're going to have to tell them, sorry, we can't transport you. Okay? We have to develop a comprehensive plan to deal with space available. As the consultant said, either do it or don't do it, but quit this quasi stuff. Okay? The Transportation Committee has met, and we've developed a number of proactive recommendations to find out what is our space available population. What we're going to do is in April and in May, we're going to send out flyers to the parents saying, are you going to ride, do you want your kids to ride next year? And put together a list of space available. The problem is we don't know how much space available we have until after the school year starts. Because if you have a route where all the kids who are eligible to ride, there's no room on the bus, there's no space available. So what we don't want to do is say to the space available kids, hey, just show up on the first day and we'll take you, because we don't know how much room there is for about 2 weeks until things kind of settle down. Okay? We could potentially set a policy of expected average ridership per bus as well to deal with the capacity issues. There's pros and cons to that, though. Okay, if we don't have enough kids for a bus, we get rid of the bus. Is that what we want to do? Okay. Performance and administration, we are not doing a comprehensive contract management plan to monitor contract adherence. You know, we're not really measuring first student and ourselves against some objective criteria. We've started to look at that now, and we will begin doing that next year, but we haven't. You know, when we lost our transportation person several years ago, that person did all that stuff. They looked at it every day. And right now, it's myself and my administrative assistant who's kind of taken the reins on this whole thing, Jamie, and she's done a very good job, but we need to kick it up to the next level to start saying, hey, where are we at on this? Are we leaking money in places that we shouldn't be leaking it in? All right? After-school activities near the end of the day on bell times is causing a problem. You can imagine that if kids are getting out of school at 3:15, and we've got buses that have to get back to pick up kids for activities at 3:30, that's a problem, because we can't get them back there that quickly, okay? We have that current two-tier system. If we went to a three-tier system, we could accommodate these requests a lot more easily. In fact, the bus consultant said that for a district our size, we should be a three-tier bus system. But that will require changing some bell times. Now, the bell times we're talking about changing are not drastic. We're not talking, you know, an hour later. In some cases, it's a few minutes. In some cases, it's 20 minutes. So we're looking at several options there that we would bring before the board in the future to have you look at. Again, in light of the budget that we just talked about, there's sometimes we have to make choices between two less optimal choices. It's which one do we want to live with more. One challenge is that the district staff would like to know at any given time who's on a bus. We don't know. We don't know, because the kids do not come on and off with like a pass card. We tried pass cards in the future. Johnny comes out, I lost my pass card. So what do you do? Now what's happened is that Johnny goes back in, he talks to the secretary who's dealing with 2 or 3 other kids and waits in line, and that bus is sitting out there right now. I talked to another district and I said, how do you guys do that? Because I heard you had passes. Yeah, if they forget their passes, they're off. Do we want to do that? You know? There is a system called Z-Pass that we're going to pilot at one of the elementary schools, that if the kid would get on, they would swipe them on, swipe them off, so you know who's on the bus at any given time, who's off the bus at any given time. Again, though, you run into the problem, if the kiddos lose the pass, what do? That's the issue that we're dealing with here. Besides implanting chips,
In
I don't know what else you could
2016,
do.
we don't have any better technology besides cards, like student numbers, fingerprint identification.
We checked all that. There is no technology out there that does that, because that's the first thing we said. What if they did the fingerprint deal? Have them do it? We'll make that a priority for
We'll
them.
talk to Mr. Forney about that.
We'll make that a priority for him. But essentially, no, there's no technology out there, surprisingly so. I was kind of the same way you are. You got to be kidding me. There's no one that can do this?
When I log onto a computer at a hospital, my fingerprint goes right on it, and I'm in.
I did have one person in one of the buildings say, I don't know if that biometric's such a good idea. And I said, why is that? Well, some of the parents might get a little uneasy that we're collecting information on their kids. And I could see some parents going that route. Hopefully not many.
But when they're missing and we don't have their fingerprint on the bus, we know they didn't come
I
to the
agree.
bus.
I agree.
Why can't we have the bus driver simply sign in the kids, little iPad app?
Takes too much time. You got to check them off. It takes too much time. You need to get them on the bus and out the door to make the next route. That's the issue. So there's not a really good answer that I can give you right now on this. We are still struggling with it.
Like you said earlier, this is really a people problem, how to consider parents' feelings, kids' feelings, teachers' feelings, if the bell schedule changes, instructional time,
Everybody looks up,
right?
scans their face.
Exactly right. And couple that with, oh yeah, we need to cut spending too. So you throw all that stuff in the mix, it's not easy.
So what do we spend totally on transportation?
About 3.6 million bucks,
Which is what % of our total budget?
3.4%.
Okay.
That is all I had for transportation. Is there any questions I can answer?
Well, I want to commend you for two powerful reports, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you.
It's not easy to give a board tough decisions that we face, but you've given us some good information, and I appreciate that. And like you say, we've got time to deal with it. We don't have to get nervous about doing something tonight or the next meeting. Any other questions from other board members? Okay, thank you. Let's go on to our resolutions. Is there a motion to request modified allowable growth for 2016-17?
Yeah, I will move to authorize a request for $2,972,794 for modified allowable growth for dropout prevention.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Riley. Any further discussion? Will you call the roll, Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Arthur?
Yes.
Ms. Riley?
Yes.
Dr. Ogres?
Yes.
Mr. Hanson?
Yes.
Mr. Grove?
Yes, and the motion carries. Next, we have our final reading of the following policies: 205, Board of Directors vacancies, 224, Policy Adoption, 703, Investments, 703.1, Investment Program, 704, Depository Institutions, 706, Payment of Claims of Goods and Services, 708, Insurance Management, 711, Fund Balance Reporting, 802, Deposition of Obsolete Equipment. Is there a motion to approve the final reading of those said policies?
I move to approve the policies and administrative regulations as presented.
Second, please.
Second?
Second by Mr. Arthur, thank you. Any further discussion, question on those policies?
I have one question on the code 703. It's one that says title investments. It talks about delegating responsibility for those funds in excess of current needs to the treasurer or chief financial officer. Is there any reason we haven't just whacked treasurer off that and made it chief financial officer? Or is treasurer like a regulatory word in that?
Well, technically, I'm the board treasurer,
I
so
mean,
that may
Is
be,
that what that is? Okay.
it may be, I don't know.
It seems
That's what it
strange we
refers
left
to,
it.
as he's the board treasurer.
Okay.
In our case, it's the same person.
Correct.
Is that okay with everybody? We understand that? Okay. Any other questions, comments? Will you call the roll, Mr. Wilson?
Dr. Ogres?
Yes.
Mr. Arthur?
Yes.
Ms. Riley?
Yes.
Mr. Hanson?
Yes.
Mr. Grove?
Yes, and the motion carries. Lastly, we have approval of the consent agenda. We gratefully acknowledge and accept from Skull Candy, a headphone company in Park City, Utah, the donation of headphones for all K-5 grade students at Carter Lake Elementary School to use with their Chromebooks and other devices. We also have personnel action and claims and accounts. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
Any further comments, questions? Will you call the roll, Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Hanson?
Yes.
Ms. Riley?
Yes.
Mr. Arthur?
Yes.
Dr. Ogres?
Yes.
Mr. Grove?
Yes, and the motion carries for the consent agenda. This concludes our meeting. We will adjourn, and immediately following adjournment, the board will hold an exempt session to conduct a strategy meeting of a public employer concerning employees covered by collective bargaining, as provided in Section 20.173 of the Code of Iowa. Meeting adjourned.